Welcome to Taking the Rams by the Horns, a podcast that takes current affairs out of current affairs. Now, I'm not going to bore you about being award-winning. You know by now, right? So that stuff, you know. But I got to say this to you. Of course, the podcast is in partnership with Sowetan Live. I'm Rams Mabotif, in case you haven't noticed. Last week, Wednesday, the Minister of Finance, Enoch Godongwana, presented his budget. And there are three things we did not budget for. Two of them were part of the budget, other one outside. So, one, well, he did not budget for VAT after trying to budget for it for a long time. But he budgeted for what we didn't budget for. He budgeted for fuel levy increase, which made us unhappy. But the one thing he could not budget for is drama unfolding at the Oval Office a few hours later between President Donald Trump and a delegation of South Africa led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. Now, you know, this has been spoken about everywhere. Everybody believes someone lost and someone won. I want to talk about the PR of that day, and I want to talk about what could have been done better, especially by our team. Well, you know, Trump can't do any better. So what could have been done better? Where did we lose it? Who were the winners, the losers, and who got a draw? And that includes in the entire delegation, including President Cyril Ramaphosa. So I call somebody who knows this stuff. Somebody who is CEO of Decode Communication. He's a chief dots connector. He's a reputation manager. He's a guru in this space. And when you hear him, you'll know why he got here. Lorato Tshenkeng is my guest. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Now, you know, now people can see you.
Yes.
I've heard you here before and people did not know how you look like. Now they can see you actually are handsome. What drama at the Oval Office?
No, listen, you know, if the Zelensky-Trump session had not happened, I guess it would have been a wow, you know, fireworks. But because we had that, call it, you know, the first take.
Yeah.
Now this was the second take.
Yes. And it got us talking, right?
Yeah.
Even though we had expected some drama,
Yes.
but it certainly got us talking. Now I wanted to deal with it in compartments.
Sure.
Did you feel that the delegation that went there, from an optic point of view and selling us point of view, was the right delegation?
So, and again, you know, to the point that you raise around, I guess the most important thing for me would have been, what is the context, right? The context is that trade relations matter for that moment and that engagement, because the US is South Africa's biggest trading partner, right? So getting in Adrian Gore, who is, you know, at Discovery, has been in business for a long time, but also as deputy chair of Business Unit South Africa, it spoke, you know, there was credibility there. But if you consider that there's a constituency of people that are, you know, said to being harmed through the white genocide, and you have Agri SA, which is the biggest in terms of anyway, you know, whether you think about the commercials of it, whether you think about the land holding, where these people are farming, whether you can think about it in any way numerically, they are dominant. And for me, the question when I read through, you know, the people who are part of the delegation, I was saying, why is Agri SA absent? Because these are the people that are going, they don't even have to say there's no white genocide where we work.
Yeah.
They will tell you about the yield. They will tell you about, you know, the kind of relationship that they have with the US in terms of the crop that they, or any produce that they bring to the US.
And interestingly, just a week before, they had just hosted the biggest agricultural show, right?
Right. Where, in fact, the President Ramaphosa was
there, and the
deputy president was there. It literally was a big moment. That number, it always is the biggest moment from an agriculture point of view.
And
so
it had more jets standing there that could have transported all the farmers to the US much quicker than.
Interestingly, didn't Trump ask for a jet?
He got a golf book.
So I'm just saying that for me, from a delegation composition point of view, the absence of Agri SA for me said, I think there's a missing thing here, right? And this is if you're projecting to the message.
Yes.
But if you're projecting to South Africans, would it not have helped if President Cyril Ramaphosa took Usbali, who's a black billionaire,
Yeah.
who is, to us saying that.
Who also told Trump that Africa loves you.
Right.
I mean, I still remember that moment
right.
when Mr. Motsepe told
And the
Trump
likelihood
that I love him.
He would have repeated that sentiment, right? Because, these things work together.
Yeah.
So the point again is that, so when you look at it from that point of view, you realize that there were things that the president may not have been in control of, i.e., the invitation of the golfers, right? We understand they were invited by President Trump himself because, he loves golf.
Almost insisted they should be in the room.
Right. But if you consider that you are going to be having two ministers in Nchabeni and Ronald Lamola, who did not have the opportunity to speak, would it not have been better to then have some of these people that could actually help you with the counter narrative without saying there is no white genocide, but they give you the facts as they are?
I sat there and I watched this thing and I treated it as showbiz.
Yeah.
Because I thought,
yes,
this is not the real thing, right? This is Trump being Trump, murder or bad murder or horrible murder.
Yes.
We all know that's what he would do. But did you have a feeling that our delegation, and specifically the president, was ready for some kind of drama like that?
I suspect he was, right? But also, I guess it helps that generally he shows himself as a person of calm demeanor.
Yeah.
So I guess if you are him, you then have that added advantage.
Yes.
Even if you're ill-prepared, the likelihood is that your own character would help you to not be rattled, to not want to Zelensky that moment, right? But was he prepared? If you think about message discipline in our practice, in comms we talk about message discipline. The things that President Ramaphosa did, to his credit, he repeated the wording that was in the message book. He kept on repeating, "We are here to reset the relations between the US and South Africa." So you can tell that there was something that he took away from, the call it, the practice run ahead of the meeting. But what he did not then do, and that's why, to a question around, was he ill-prepared to respond to that showbiz moment? It is that when there was an opportunity for him to say, one, while the EFF is not part of the governing party, we are a sovereign state. And he didn't have to say we are a sovereign state. He could have just said the apex court in our country recognizes the context of this song and it pronounced itself. And because we are a nation of...
But he wouldn't get a chance. That guy was interrupting him all the time, like I'm interrupting you now.
No.
Like,
sure, right. And I guess he also realized that, the Zelensky moment, because Zelensky did not take it lying down.
Yes.
When he realized that J.D. Vance, the deputy president of the U.S., he was being a lot more harder. He also became a lot more harder. When he was louder, he was also becoming louder, right? And President Ramaphosa avoided that, right? But in key moments, when you have an opportunity to introduce the COSATU, president, right? Before she speaks, you make the point. So I'm saying there are moments, there are silence, there are, small moments where when President Trump had given the president the moment to speak, he could have done that. For instance, he interjected when there was the point up or the thing about, we've won the Rugby World Cup, and you got to say 4 times. He even reported, respond 4 times, because you could see that he was emphatic about it. Yes. So I'm saying there were moments.
Although you are wrong here, what is rugby to America? Right.
Indeed.
Well, then we got a number of people speaking, getting an opportunity to speak, right? The debate out there is that maybe some of them should not have spoken.
Yes.
Now, if the debate if the argument out there is that the golfers got into the room, including the biggest social golfer, Rupert, although he would have been wearing a business hat, that they got into the room because their friend Donald J. Trump said they must be in the room. Do you think then we owed it to Trump for them to say something, even though we had not prepped them clearly?
So I guess the trouble is, when you are invited, you can't always dictate the terms.
Yes.
And I guess that was the unfair advantage that the US had in that meeting, right? and again, not wanting to, use a stronger way to piss off Donald Trump, the president.
Use stronger words here.
Oh. And we don't have anything strong in here. It's just cappuccino. In not wanting to piss off Trump, the president then had to, almost follow the lead of President Trump.
Yeah.
So if he had wanted, Retief Hossein to say something, he would then say, no, we'll give him a chance. Whether he was worried about what Retief was going to say or what Annie was going to say, it's a different thing, right? But you can tell that. So let's talk about the social golfer himself. Two key messages that come out of his input. One, that we need this relationship, right? He's a billionaire. He's his brands are all over the world.
Yeah.
So he's a person who understands the importance of a global village, right? So his message was on script. But then he does the thing that typical business people do. He does a sales pitch.
What would you do?
Billionaire.
What would you do?
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, the third thing, he then I doubt he had thought about it or he had prepared it, right? He then attacks another member of the delegation. That is message ill discipline. He may have, you may have something that you want to say to somebody, but in a session like that, you always want to project that we are unified in what we want to project in the room. And that's what I'm saying. At least, you see the golfers, the pro golfers, I can excuse them because they came at the invitation.
We're going to go to them, by the way.
Yes, right. But Rupert, we understand that he may have been instrumental in brokering the actual meeting.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's a sense that with the direct line to the president, the preparation would have been the thing that would have happened. But that moment, in my view, it was quite cringeworthy. I think, and we saw the DA has responded with an opinion piece, or at least with some writing where they felt highly attacked by that comment from Rupert.
And then, of course, Rupert did not miss the opportunity to ridicule the Minister of International Relations, right, and Cooperation. But I laughed at that, and people would say, "But why would you laugh at a condescending act like that?" I thought, well, Rupert is Rupert, right? And at some point, being a Kali in a farm and there's a Sipo who's a farm worker, always comes out, you know how they play, they strangle us and say, hey, you bugger. That's what he was doing, right?
Yes.
He remembered that he's a white boss and a black guy there, right?
Yeah.
And I think, and you the expert, but I think that Ronald not responding to that was super.
No.
He didn't stoop to that level.
Absolutely. And I guess it's in, one, sadly, Ronald Lamola is the Minister of Department of International Relations and Cooperation. He's been dealt a raw deal. So you come into a position where the woman before you, the person before you, she was strong. She stood, the one moment at the AU headquarters in Addis Ababa, where it was said that there was an Israeli in the room, and they said that they are just there, as observers.
Yeah.
She said, no, but there can't be observers in here. She would until they were removed. Yeah. So she's that type of a person.
She's the one who took us to the ICJ.
Right.
That's how strong she is.
Right. And then you have Ronald Lamola, who, we also know him as somebody who stands for principle.
Yeah.
There was a meeting that happened at one of the biggest ANC, congregations, and he stood there as a lonesome figure, saying that this guy, Jacob Zuma, is not the type of president we should be having as the president. So you can tell that this is a person who, when a moment calls, he will stand for principle, right? And therefore, you thinking that he's not a coward. Absolutely, because it demonstrated that he's not a coward. But him not responding, and I guess it was also, oftentimes you need to also read the room. He read the room. He knew that moment was racist, and he knew that it was, white supremacist in every shade and every way. But he knew that should he respond, it would de-escalate.
And he would be playing in the hands of the orange man, right?
Absolutely.
And you don't want to play in the hands of
Absolutely.
the orange man. But let's go to the Rupert and John Steenhuisen moment.
Yes.
What do you think Rupert was doing there? What was he trying to do? I mean, Look, by the way, are you related?
Yes.
Right? When somebody said, no, actually, the Western Cape is the one it's got more crime. It's like, yeah, thank you. He's coming from another Mlungu, even better.
Yes.
But what do you think he was doing?
Uh, I suspect it was one, the emphasis on the messaging, right? To say, without saying there is no white genocide, to say, in an area which is predominantly colored in terms of residents, right? You have an infestation of gangsterism.
Yeah.
From a governance point of view, you have a white government, or at least a DA-led government, which is not necessarily prioritizing the importance of how do you fight this this thing, right? So it was a communicate differently. But when you saying that to Trump, he will not read between the lines what you say. Sadly, for me, I think
I even thought, Rupert saying the Cape Flats to Trump, like, what is the Cape Flats? Because I thought he should have said, colored townships or something like that. Not call it Cape Flats because that's our language.
Yes, right. So in how I read it was that he was just emphasizing the message that there are no white people who are specifically targeted because they are whites.
Yeah.
In fact, generally, we have a crime problem, which is what he started with in his opening message, right? And to emphasize, unfortunately, I guess John Steenhuisen was in line of sight, and he just said, I need to make an example with an anecdote.
But I also think, well, two things.
Yes.
I think that he wanted to also, and I think you've said it a bit, that he was trying to show that crime has no color in this country. Right?
Yes.
But I think what he also was doing is that my friend is that guy sitting next to Trump, not you, the fellow white man there. I think he was playing that game.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed. No.
So let's go to any else. I mean, I know he was not prepped, right? I mean, you could see they were not prepped. But Angola, I mean, how do you... No, man. I mean, I don't take sports people seriously when it comes to comment, but that was way, way, way bad.
Interestingly, so when Amanda Black, at the height of COVID, was speaking against vaccines, and Amanda Black is one of the South Africa, one of the best, non-idols winner to blow up in the music scene, and the biggest criticism that she got was that you are an artist, shut up, what do you know about anything? Of course, I then wrote an opinion piece in the Sunday Times where I said, coincidentally, in this week, when all of you are telling Amanda Black to shut up, on Friday we'll be celebrating, I think it was the 50th year, when Miriam Makeba had been standing
in front of the UN.
In front of the UN as an artist.
The result of which is that they declared apartheid a crime against humanity.
Right. And I said, one of the things that we must never lose in how we have conversations is to label people, to say you are an artist, therefore you must only sing, right? And with the golfers in the room, I wanted to give them that credit, to say, while you are, in fact, the younger people who are younger than you and I, they talk about slash. They say, Rams Mabote, who's a golfer slash, podcaster slash, right? So I want to see people that way, that we are slash many things.
We are more than one thing.
We are more than one thing, right? And in the more than one thing, you then hope that if you are any else who, then wants to talk about this moment about, and I just think about how the Cubans, that to this day, the Americans would actually want to obliterate them.
Completely.
It's an interesting thing that, unlike Canada, they didn't want to buy them as a country.
Yeah, no. They don't want anything to do with Cuba. It's a stone's throw from Florida.
Right. And you think about that and you say, this is history gone wrong. History lesson gone wrong. So you have somebody who, understands history in the way they want to understand it, or the way they understand it. And you can tell that it was history gone wrong, where he now goes on to say, oh, by the way, we've been, free for 35 years. And the first time I thought it was a slip of the tongue. Yeah. And I said, I'll give it to him. And then he said, oh, we've got freedom since 1990. I said, he repeated it 3 times.
Yes.
Then you say, this is not a slip of the tongue. Considering that between 1990 and 1994, there was a referendum where some white people...
A lot of white people voted no.
No.
Yeah, to change, right?
Right. So for me, it was again so revealing that we must worry. And that is why I was asking, why was Bali not in the room? Because Zbali may from a
For
political...
the record, Sibali is Patrice.
Yes.
Patrice Motsepe.
Right.
Yeah.
He may not represent the kind of...
And he's the next president of the ANC.
I don't know about
I don't know about that either. I read about it.
In fact, two weekends in a row, the biggest Sunday paper,
Aye.
has been... Anyway, we digress.
Let's not digress.
So, when you listened and looked at anything else and that moment, you then realize that, sadly, they played into the hands of contributing to this white supremacist agenda.
I mean, I thought, here you are. By the way, this thing happens literally a month after NELs opens an amazing golf course in KZN.
Yes.
At Zimbabwe.
Yes.
This could have said, this is what you talk about. You say, listen, things are happening in that country. I have just opened a golf course among many that I have done in South Africa. I've got Copperleaf here, Why go to helping? I mean, that part you helped us in Angola. Like, who's us in this case?
And I guess sometimes it's in fact, there's a caller who called into one talk radio station and he said, while we may be very critical of President Cyril Ramaphosa and his delegation, we must also accept that at some point in our lives, we took a lift from somebody who had more money than us.
Yeah.
Their jokes were silly. They were making the most, craziest sexist remarks. And we just giggled at those. So I suspect, again, any else may have also been overwhelmed by the moment. So, when you want to say to somebody, oh, you are so, that this person is not the most good-looking person. They're not the kindest person, but you want to stroke their ego. And that's exactly what he was doing, to say, oh, thank you for helping us.
I think, and I'm going to hope that you disagree with me.
Yes.
I think we're making too much hoo-ha about this thing.
Okay.
I think what happened in that room was us going to beg for a relationship to continue.
Yes.
We were the small people in the room.
Yeah.
We were there to beg, but as a result, should have been willing to take the punches. It's like a husband who didn't come back home the previous night, and he arrives in the morning with a truckload of flowers and stuff. And I think that's who we were in that room. Am I wrong?
No, you are not wrong at all, right? And I guess, when you have in context, right? So you have major motor manufacturing companies in the country who are saying, firstly, there's an onslaught from the Chinese manufacturers. We are worried that they are bringing... So we have invested in this country. We have manufacturing plants, with the Mercedes-Benz in Etenache. You have, Nissan and many others in and around Roslyn, Pretoria, right? The Chinese are bringing in these cheap imports, and we are losing out on market share. Should the tariffs be imposed, it's going to be worse, because our biggest export markets is the US, outside of all of these other markets. So it therefore means that we are going to be choked. So if you are a President Cyril Ramaphosa and Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Pakstow, the thing that you are then thinking about is that the last thing I need to hear from an Audi, from from BMW, is for them to say that we are packing up and we are leaving.
Yes.
Because
to which the EFF would say, Mabaham.
Yeah, right. So I guess it therefore then strengthens the case of, you must come in the room and say, Reakoba, don't go. We need you to be here.
Yes.
Could it have?
We love you just the way you are.
We love you, right?
Yeah.
Could it have been communicated differently? Absolutely.
Where do you slip in the better communication? So we now agreeing it was not communicated better. How would you have slipped it in? Where could it happen better? And I'm asking this question also because in one WhatsApp group I was in on that day, I then said to people, the Meet the Press joint or gig, it's exactly what it is.
Yes.
Beyond this, these guys still meet in closed rooms and stuff like that. Is that where then you do the real stuff? Of course, you would have then left the audience watching all over the world about the horrible stuff.
Yes. The way I understand the US politics system to work on is that whenever you need to speak to, particularly the political class, whether it's, congressmen and people at that level, a lot of them also like it too. There'll be a behind the scenes sessions, but they also like to be seen, right? Did we do good enough on third party endorsement? I don't think we did.
Yes.
So if you look at the number of places where Marco Rubio was sitting in and there were pushbacks on this narrative, would you not have gone to that congressman and said, let us have a one-on-one, let's have a public engagement, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying the missed opportunity was on you must have a strong delegation that must go and meet with the president. That did its job to an extent. But third-party endorsements, because now you all of a sudden have people with constituencies where when you have left and you're now on a plane back to South Africa, they continue the conversations.
In that country where you need to build relations, right?
Absolutely.
And you had an opportunity. These guys were there. We were seeing them all over.
Absolutely.
Did we use them? You say we didn't use them.
And I guess that is where in South Africa we miss on lobbying.
Yes.
In our practice, I think we focus a lot more on publicity than on lobbying.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the scheme of things, I then hear, if President Ramaphosa would have rebutted the lies that Trump was telling, and by the way, I had to post something like, Trump is not giving a narrative; he's lying.
Yes.
People must stop putting this thing differently, right?
Not true.
People saying you should have rebutted much stronger. You saying, well, that could have taken us the Zelensky route. The better way was third-party endorsement. But I'm asking this question now.
Yeah.
Is there an opportunity post the fracas of that 45-minute gig? Is there an opportunity to do something to still redeem us?
Absolutely, Khon. And again, and I know that it's knee-jerk. It's not systematized. So yesterday in the Sunday Times, there was an opinion piece by the minister in the presidency, Muso Moment, right? And she decided to address the constituency that is now responsible for us, being in the media for all of these lies, right? The biggest thing is going to be, are we going to see this kind of consistency where there's these ones brought the rubbish to our doorstep. We now need to tackle them directly.
Yeah.
You tackle them through the courts, you tackle them through, publicity, you tackle them through forums and platforms where you're going to rebut this narrative, right? And if we're going to see that continuing, and again, you do it in different ways. So you have this young man, who's brilliant there he's the deputy minister he's a Pirates fan. Deputy Minister at the Department of Trade Industry.
I don't know any deputy minister.
Godlimpi.
Okay.
Yes. Zuko Godlimpi.
Okay.
He's actually the chairperson of the ANC's Transformation Committee, subcommittee.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm saying, so you have this young chap who, one, speaks boldly about anything that is around economic transformation in South Africa. Right? He's empowered by his own position. He should be the one that, in my view, because this is more a trade narrative that we need more than anything, right? Whether you're talking from an agriculture point of view, manufacturing, ICT, or whatever the case may be, there should be a communication strategy that Zuko leads, both from him being in government and him being in ANC. So I'm saying there are ways that...
And he has the right name, Ukohli. I can't get the name.
I didn't even think about... Listen, I think there's a piece that must be written about Godlimpi and what he could be doing here. Yeah. But the point that I'm making is that there's a thing that the ANC as the dominant party in the GNU could take charge of this. Because currently what we're seeing, the DA is now on self-defense mode because they need to defend themselves about this thing that they are actually not doing anything about the crime in Cape Flats, which is what we've all been saying, that when you land into Cape Town, the first place you see is Nyanga.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
All in its glory. And all of us end in town where we're going to be in the nicest coffee spots.
When we direct people say, I'm on the left side of the mountain, whatever.
Right. So the DA is not well placed to be able to contribute to this to this narrative.
Yeah.
And therefore the opportunity for government is to do that. But they must be consistent. And they must actually do it for the next while until the ANC conference, because I think in that way they may win not only the hearts of South Africans, but even those that they want to persuade overseas that, we need you to continue to be our friends.
Is there a room, or was there a room, or could there be a room of, simple media buying, taking a supplement in Time magazine, in the New York Post, and telling the story of South Africa that could not be told in that funny moment with the orange man?
In fact, Brand South Africa, which is responsible for, internationally managing a reputation of South Africa Incorporated, should be empowered to do that. Where now you've seen many nations where, whether it's India with their incredible India campaign, right? They use platforms such as CNN, Sky, BBC, and many others to say, we are a country that we want you to come and visit. Not only because you're considered to be a monk, but, because we believe that we want you to come and spend your dollars here, because it benefits our people. So there is that where, Brand South Africa should now be a channel through which they use. And then you have Tourism SA, right? Which again could be that platform where you say, how do you take this, two entities of government whose responsibility is to make sure that there are millions of feet.
They're selling us to the world and the world comes to us, right?
Right. So I'm saying it's again a reprioritization where you realize that, and your question, I guess, it also comes out on, there's an interview of Sidi Madia.
I'm going to get there. I'm going to get to Sidi Madia. I'm going to get to that hero, right? But let's close this one a bit.
Yes.
So, I think about it now and say, maybe we should have actually let the Tottenham Hotspur deal happen. I mean, in many ways, like as they used to be beaten.
Sure.
But, they're a great association. They get beaten and then they win once and everybody gets to make noise. We should have done the Tottenham Hotspur thing. They would be talking to the world for us. Before we go to Sidi Madia, I need to deal with another matter.
Yeah.
How is it that, two things. Donald Trump stands on podiums and lies.
Yes.
Right? I find it strange that it is not a PR embarrassment on his part, or maybe I'm not seeing it. That it's okay that even news anchors would go and repeat the same nonsense when they can research and how does this work in your world?
I guess it talks to the psyche, right? The psyche of an American audience that Donald Trump talks to. And that's the same audience that voted him into power, right? In millions.
Millions.
And similarly, in South Africa, I guess it talks to the 49 Americanders who left. Because in my view, there are many like those who actually want to leave. But the uncertainty of going to Texas worries them versus the comfort that they have here, right? So you have, and that is why, I was even saying, you'll see one Max Dupree, literally going strongly against to say, but Kali Grill and his ilk, this is absolute rubbish. Are we seeing this solidarity from white community in the main? We are not, right? So I'm saying that he can stand boldly and it does not feel like embarrassment. It is because there's an audience for that. There are people who believe, that, and that is why they will then go and repeat it. Similarly, in fact, not even similarly, in South Africa, you'd remember there's an Institute for Justice in IJR, Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. There was a study they conducted. In that study, majority of white South Africans said that they don't believe that apartheid was a crime against humanity.
Well, Helen Ziller repeated it.
Right. And the point then, Khona, is that even when people lie, when any else lies about, the Angola moment, people are going to believe him because there's an audience that wants to believe that.
Okay, Sidi Madia. Like, when everything was done, right, when we were all angry and we thought, the government dropped the ball here, they should have tackled this man and blah, 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 any else should not have spoken, all those things. A young journalist goes into an interview somewhere And she does a better job than all those men in
Yeah.
that room.
Nkgonne, I think you know, because I watched the video so many times and I retweeted it so many times.
Yeah.
For me, the moment was yesterday. Yesterday on Sunday, then there's a clip of Bishop Musa
Yeah.
of Grace Bible Church. I think they were having some prayer around or conversation around careers. Then he had forgotten the media, communications, and marketing people. Then somebody whispered in his ear, and then said, "Yo, how can I forget you all? You know, in fact, you're going to even write about me that I forgot about you. By the way, who's that young lady from?" He made a mistake by saying ENCA.
Yeah.
Said, Sidi Madia, when you meet her, give her a high five for me.
Man.
And I said, so here again, you have a person who has a platform, who speaks to thousands of people every Sunday, who possibly communicates to them every Wednesdays through home cells.
Yes.
He then has the opportunity to say, as a community, there's a message we need to repeat. But we also need to celebrate the ambassadors of our message. And that's what I'm saying. So you then recognize that there's an opportunity for us to then, and again, the president could be saying, I need the South African Council of Churches to come here, specifically the Geformeerde Kerk van Zuid-Afrika, to say, guys, you are the problem. The white people are sitting silently. Desmond Tutu said, when injustice is happening and you are quiet, you are complicit. I'm paraphrasing,
yes.
Right? But I'm just saying that you see there are these moments. Anyway, let's now go back to. I was just excited by the Musa moment because she may have been acknowledged by all of us, by being acknowledged by that platform. So what Sidi Madia did, was that, or at least for me, right, was not only about putting the journalist in his place through facts. It was the patriotism that stood out. In many instances, journalism in South Africa is, call it labeled as non-patriotic, right? For many reasons, and
we're not going to lie. Even the platform for which she works has been accused by others for not being patriotic,
right?
Yeah.
So when you then have a young black South African who's able to, and who's a woman, who is a political editor on that platform, right? Who then says, I come with all of this credibility of having many years of experience. And in the moment, she then even goes on to say, let me lecture you a little bit. It was that moment when I said, and I think we need to be doing that intentionally, right? Where you then recognize that you are not just ill-informed or misinformed. You need education. Right.
So finally,
yes, Mkhon.
Who were the winners, who were the losers, and who got a draw?
The winner definitely for me, President Ramaphosa. He may not, won by a big margin.
Yeah.
If it
was
was
like a Sundowns kind of thing in the PSA.
No.
It was a tight race.
It was a tight race, but he won because he played the long game. The long game is that South Africa, we're at a point where economic growth is not, on our side. We have these threats of tariffs and all of that. And if you are a leader of a country, you then need to be thinking about, the people who are unemployed. Are you going to deepen it by the decision of, trying to boisterously tell the truth, or sheepishly saying, yeah, no, but that is not true, right? So he's the winner. I also want to declare, somebody who should have won by big margin, but reversed a little bit of that win, Zingiswa Losi.
Okay.
She and I'm saying could have, because sometimes when you also try to overemphasize the point, you then, now
she overspoke. And over demonstrated,
and that is the thing that biggest takeaway for communicators and leaders to say. Sometimes when you overspeak, you then say the things that you are not intending to say. Right, but definitely
platforms do that to people.
No, indeed.
People can't leave a platform. Now it's happening. The world is watching me. I gotta go on. Yeah, okay.
Right. And then of course the people who we can't declare them because they didn't play. Ronald Lamola and Minister Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, they were in the room but they didn't play. Right. And then John Steenhuisen is a draw in the sense that when he had the opportunity to speak about international relations matters, he decided to go domestic. Right, which
and he went back to his obsession about the EFF. That's why we kept them out of
right. And I say, when you are there, in fact, the likelihood is Trump does not even know. He just saw this guy who was dancing, saying, "Kill the poor, kill the farmer." He does not know that his party is the EFF. So that you're trying to keep the EFF out of. So it was such a missed opportunity from there, because if you consider that his governance around all matters agriculture, he had the opportunity to say, all the farmers, actually, we have the stats, we have the data. We can tell you confidently that this white genocide is not happening. Right? And then I would give Rupert a draw. And Rupert a draw again, because I think the Starlink thing was terrible. Considering that we now have the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, who's now tied himself into many knots with this directive that is now going to go to Parliament. So it almost looks like it was a choreographed thing for him. So it was not about South Africa, but it was business interest. Right? So that's why for me, and I know many people are saying, yeah, he's a true patriot. And I say, listen, I don't know how you define patriotism. That for me is not patriotism. He's patriotic to his money. And that's exactly what he was doing. Right? And then the losers were the two golfers.
Shame.
Especially Retief Goosen. When Retief, and again, it's, when you have a moment and you now tell a story about, family in South Africa, they're struggling. You are literally playing into this thing.
You are repeating the same message that this guy... Exactly.
I have people who are white, who live in a farm, who are threatened daily by this thing. So should we be creating space for more refuge, for more people? Of course. You must actually, the aeroplane must be on the runway idling as we sit, because those people there in South Africa are worried. Right? And then, with any else glorifying the Cuito Carnavalo moment, I say, what we must do is that we must actually send him gifts of books that talk about that moment, so that when he reads, he recognizes that.
He reads.
Oh. So that's those are my scores.
Well, one last thing.
Yes.
During Zelensky, JD joined in talking, right?
Yes.
In this game, in this instance, from America, only one person spoke.
Yes.
I mean, what do you think that message was saying to Americans who are part of his administration, who are in the room, including, by the way, the Prime Minister, Evil Musk?
Yes. I think it was an interesting thing to observe, right? But then again, if we're just to do a compare and contrast with the Zelensky moment, JD firstly was sitting at the at the tip of the couch, where he almost wanted to defend the president and attack Zelensky for him speaking back, because
not
he was
respecting
almost
the president.
Yes, right, to say you have the audacity to speak to our president that way, and I'm not going to allow you. And I guess those moments didn't happen. But interestingly, the delegation of the US, a lot of them, Evil Musk included, he was standing there at the back, amongst some of the camera crew.
Yeah.
So it didn't look like he was there invited openly like we had seen him before, where he comes into the Oval Office with his son, and there seems to be you are part of this. So I think maybe I'm overthinking it, but I think the relationship has come to the point where it breaks down, and now it was just optics that he was in the room. But essentially, he's not as influential as he was a few months ago, or at least 100 days ago. Yeah.
Lorato Tshenkeng, thank you very much for coming through, mate. This book is not for you.
Yes.
So as we conclude, in the words of Sidi Madia, show me the evidence that you've bought this book. I want the evidence, okay? Don't just howl. And thank you for watching this episode of the Taking the Rams by the Horns. This book is available on all bookstores. It is also on Take a Lot. It is out there. We were celebrating it at the Kingsmead Book Fair this weekend, man. Don't miss out. Follow all of our content. It's on Spotify and on YouTube. It's Taking the Rams by the Horns. For me, Rams Mabote. Goodbye and God bless.